So the best bike you can buy is the one that makes you want to go ride. Were we lost? No, but did we have some navigational snafus? Yes.
Welcome to Tell Me About Your Bike, the podcast about the meaning of life, the universe, and bicycling. I'm your host, Wesley Cheney. In this episode of Tell Me About Your Bike, I asked local bike shop owner Andrew Greene to tell me about his first bike, his favorite bike, and what makes a good bike ride. Welcome to Tell Me About Your Bike, Andrew Greene, the podcast about the meaning of life, the universe, and bicycling. So, give us a little introduction. Who are you? What you been doing?
Well, first off, Wesley, thanks for having me. My name is Andrew Greene. I own the Charleston Bicycle Center in lovely Charleston, West Virginia. I, gosh, I don't know what you want me to say after that. I like to ride bikes. That'll suffice for now.
All right. Well, tell me about your first bike.
Good grief. Like my first bike as a kid or my first real bike that I picked out as a grown up?
How about both? Tell me about your first bike as a kid and then your first bike as a grown-up.
Oh man, my first bike as a kid, like my parents took me to Kmart and it was I think it was called a Huffy White Lightning.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, it was I don't remember how long ago that was, how old I was at the time. Um, but yeah, I rode that thing around in the yard. I lived on the edge of the woods, so I was getting into the woods and riding every chance I could, kind of exploring in anything I could, anywhere I could go, basically. Um, it was freedom, and I still think that today. Every time I get on my bike, it feels like freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Let's see, my I guess the next milestone bike in my life. I was in college and I got a Trek 4300. It was a like an entry level mountain bike. I rode from the apartment I lived in off campus to classes, and it really just fell in love
Yeah, yeah.
with getting around on a bike. Yeah, absolutely. That was the hook.
Cool. When was the last time you rode?
About 2 weeks ago, that's the last time I rode outside. I've been
Have
on
you
a
been ri-
trainer.
have you been riding inside?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, same
Probably
here.
not enough. But yeah, I was outside 2 weeks ago. One of my friends had just gotten a new bike. Um, he got one of the team bikes that they sold off from last year from Team EF Cannondale. So
Sweet.
we, yeah, it's a pretty sweet bike. It's a Super Six high mod. It's the like white and pink and yellow.
Carbon fiber.
Uh, yeah, yeah, right. It's a beautiful bike. Top of the line electronic drivetrain and all of that jazz. Um, so yeah, the three of us got out and rode about 30 miles or so. It was, it was a rare day, early February. It was about low 50s, I think.
Right.
So we capitalized on it. He had a new bike, wanted to get out on. I was happy to join him for a few miles.
What were you
Um,
riding on?
I was riding on my road bike. It's a Cannondale Super Six Evo 4. Um,
Is it
so
electronic shifting?
it is not. It's a mechanical 105 drivetrain.
Okay.
It's I decided I would rather upgrade the wheels than upgrade the drivetrain.
Yeah.
So I've got a set of the hologram carbon wheels on it instead of electronic drivetrain, and I could not be happier. Love it.
What's your gearing? 1x12?
It's a 2x12.
Okay.
I've 5236 up front and 1130 cassette.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Sorry, I get to geek out every once in a while.
It's all right. It's not every day I get to have, conversations where I can just throw out numbers and talk about drivetrains and that kind of thing. So, and I do this for a living.
Yeah, yeah. What makes a great bike?
I have said for many, many years the single best attribute that you can have in a bike is that the bike makes you want to ride it.
Okay.
That's absolutely the best thing. If you have a bike that you just love riding and you want to go ride it, you will.
Right.
And if you have a bike that gives you headaches or it doesn't fit right or it's not comfortable or it's heavy and clunky or whatever it is, if there's some hang up with the bike, you're not going to want to ride it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the best bike you can buy is the one that makes you want to go ride.
Tell me about the last time you got lost on your bike.
Oh, um, goodness, Wesley, I'm not sure I've got any stories that fit that description.
All right. No worries.
There have been times I've been on rides and, had no more than a vague idea where I was.
Right.
But I haven't been on solo missions doing that. You know what? I take that back. Um, yeah, there's a pretty decent story that'll fit. So a friend and I, he had just gotten a gravel bike. He kind of wanted to explore where he could ride the gravel bike around here.
Mm-hmm.
So we went out to Canal State Forest, and we're gonna do a little exploration on his gravel bike. He mountain bikes, I mountain bike occasionally, um, but both of us, ride more on the road than anything else. And so we had a choice of, should we go here and start, and then like, because there are a couple of um, boundary roads that are double track out in Canal State Forest,
Yeah.
just outside of town here, and so. So we could take a couple of different trails to get to the boundary, and pick up one of those roads. So he chose, well, let's go out this trail that I'm not as familiar with. It was more of a double track to get to more double track. Um, and I wasn't familiar with how to get from the end of where we were going to meet the boundary road, down around where we wanted to go. So I let him do the navigating. And there were about six different times that this particular section of the boundary road, from where we met it to where I knew where we were going to be, um, that we got to what looked like a crossroads, and we're like, well, should we go left or we go right? And there's notoriously very little cell phone service out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, fortunately, we were up on top of the ridge, which is the only place you get service. But yeah, half a dozen different times, like we were at one of these forks in the trail, because it was overgrown and just it's not used very much.
Right.
So um, yeah, so we had all of these crises of navigation that yeah, I'll say, it was an adventure. We ended up riding about, I don't know, 8 or 9 miles, I think, in 2+ hours,
Okay.
because we spent so much time, yeah, at a junction trying to figure out, should we go this way or that way. And yeah, so were we lost? No, but did we have some navigational snafus? Yes.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, I was trying to find I was with my partner out at Dothat State Park in Virginia, and
Yeah.
they had this they had a an app where you could download it and use maps offline, and it made it because there's no cell phone reception. So if you
Yeah.
wanted to know where you were on the trails, this app was your only option. But it worked really great, and I'll have to look and recommend it to the Kanawha State Forest because that would make it a lot easier.
Very helpful. It would be very helpful.
My last time out there, I got to a fork in the trail, and it was I was meeting the uh, the Ridgeline Trail, from the top of the paved road on the south side of the park,
Mhm.
and I was trying to find Big Bear descend that and see if I wanted to do the enduro race down that. And it was actually to the right, but I chose the left. I ended up having a great ride, but I still didn't exactly know where I was. And if I had had this map app with me, I would have been able to look at it and gone like, oh, yes, I need to go to the right, you know.
Right.
But I was just kind of guessing. I was like, well, whatever. I'm going downhill either way, so it should be a good ride. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the fun thing about it is there isn't a bad trail out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like especially in Canal State Forest, um, like I knew in general that we needed to stay on the boundary road, or if we were going downhill, we needed to be on the left side of the hill to
Hmm.
get back to, anywhere that we knew where we were. But so we weren't necessarily lost. But yeah, that's the thing is you kind of the lay of the land to some extent. You can't really get lost.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you head downhill, you're eventually going to get to somewhere that you know where you are.
Right.
I found it at Canal State Forest. So, what kind of bike were you riding that day with your friend?
Let's see. That was the gravel bike. That is a Cannondale Super 6 Evo SE. I've got a one by mostly Shimano GRX draft train on it.
Okay,
Um,
1x12.
I it's one by 11.
Okay,
Um, but I've got an E13 cassette on the back, so I have a 946 rear cassette instead
okay.
of the 1142. That's the stock one by option.
Those four extra teeth make a difference when you're going up some of these hills around here.
They do, and then the nine tooth on the other end of the cassette,
Yeah.
makes it a little more palatable because like gravel rides around here involve riding on pavement to get to the gravel.
Right.
So
You don't want to be spinning out.
right, yeah, so that covers all the bases. And I think I have a 42 up front.
Cool. What makes a great bike ride?
Good question. My favorite things about the bike ride, any given day, I'll say if it's a solo ride that I feel like I've gotten, the best out of myself.
Hmm.
That I've as much it's fun and it's freedom, yes, but it's also fitness and it's exercise. So that's always a goal for me is that I've put out a good effort, that I feel like I've done some work.
Hmm.
I'm also I don't know exactly know how to describe this, but I'm very much a person who enjoys, like I like getting off the beaten path,
Yeah.
and getting out. Scenery is high in my book. Um, so I've done some good work and I've done it in a beautiful place. Those are two key ingredients. If I'm
Yeah.
riding with a group and with friends, obviously, that brings another layer into things. So. I'm not the guy who's talking away, or necessarily wants to talk away like every minute of
Hmm.
every ride,
Hmm.
because I only have so many words in any given day. I'm going to be using a lot of them here. I realize that, but I'm content just like being there and witnessing the same thing, with a good group of people. Obviously, there needs to be some conversation, or it might as well be a solo ride.
Hmm.
So yeah, like having somebody who's good to converse with on a ride is just an enhancement. Um, yeah, I'm going to say those are some key ingredients for making a good ride. There are other times, like an entirely different category of good ride. Ones that are more memorable are when things happen. We had a mechanical and like it was almost dark, or had a flat tire and it was raining, or whatever. Just it was the kind of things that are unscripted.
Right.
Um,
Right.
they definitely make things memorable. Um, and sometimes. like there are big events out there. Like I'm thinking of, I haven't done it personally, but like the assault on Mount Mitchell.
Right.
Like I've got a couple of friends who ride every year from the highest point in West Virginia, Spruce Knob. They ride from Spruce Knob to Snowshoe Mountain and back to Spruce Knob, or they do it the other way around: Snowshoe to Spruce Knob and back to Snowshoe, which is a big ski resort. Hosted
Yeah.
the downhill World Cup race here for a few years. It's about 140 miles and like 12,000 or 13,000 feet of climbing,
Oh,
something
that
along
sounds
those
great.
lines. Yeah, like there's a certain, epic quality that lends itself to, um,
You got to get me in touch with them because that sounds great. I would love to get some stories from them about that ride and
oh
cover it.
yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
some great content.
They didn't do it the last time that I think I was in shape enough that I really like felt like I would have been able to do it. And it's one of those things like they do it every year and it's always kind of later in the season, so they're in better shape. But that's a two-edged sword because they're in better shape, yes, but they have less daylight to deal with.
Right.
Um, so, like hearing their stories coming back from that ride, that is kind of exemplary of, one thing that it just like they're always leaving, in the dark in the morning,
Right. Right.
and they're out on their bikes all day, and it's like it's remote country up there. There's not a lot of infrastructure. There are plenty of roads for them to ride on,
Right.
but there's like
You're
there
lucky
there's
if
a
you see a dollar store.
yeah, right. Like there aren't any gas stations, on the route that they ride. Like they're stashing coolers the night before, so they've got a place to get new water bottles and stash some food. And then so they're out there like themselves against nature, I guess, or the ride that they've tasked themselves with. And by the time that they're done, like it's almost always dark and it's cold, and because they're up in the elevation, and so the air's thin and whatnot. So they always come away like with absolutely great stories. Um,
And how?
and like
What kind of bikes
those
are
don't
they?
necessarily, yeah, they're not necessarily the best rides, but they're definitely the most memorable because
It reminds me of randoneering,
yeah.
which I did a season of that in Virginia, and finished it off, capped it off with the final running of the Boston Montreal Boston ride, which was
Oh wow.
90 hours and 1,200 kilometers.
That's a healthy couple of days. What
No,
is that?
yeah, but I would love to. How? So I've got questions. Like first off, um, how fast are they riding, and what kind of bikes are they riding, and how much does the group splinter?
Well, so let's see. First off, it's two of them.
Okay,
So just two riders. They're on standard road bikes. Um, yeah, I'd say all in they're averaging like 12 to 15 miles an hour.
okay,
There's not a lot of time to waste when you're trying to tackle 140 miles
yeah,
in like 10 hours of sunlight or whatever we have. I think they normally try in September.
yeah.
So I mean, it's a long day. But just the main thing is to just keep the pedals turning.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be epic. I would love to learn more about that. All right, so tell me about your favorite bike.
Oh, my favorite bike. I don't know that I have a favorite bike. I think really, my favorite bike is probably the one I'm riding now.
Right, right.
Like whatever the next ride is. Um, yeah, I've got to say it's the bike underneath me at the moment. I love all my bikes. And most any bike, for that matter.
Do you name your bikes?
I'm not a guy who names bikes. I don't. I know a lot of people do, and I don't know if that's I don't want to get too attached to it because something may happen, and I don't know.
It
Um,
makes it easier to say goodbye when they don't
yeah,
have names.
right. And being in my position, owning the bike shop, I guess that it makes it a more real possibility that I'm probably going to sell this bike or that bike, in you know, on a quicker turnaround than a lot of people.
Hmm.
So. I haven't actually like consciously thought that's a self-preservation tactic, but
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I keep this is gonna, I'm sure, anger some people, but a bicycle's a thing.
Hmm.
Like it's not a person. Like I kind of keep that perspective that people are people, and pets are almost people, in a lot of ways. But like a bicycle's a thing.
Hmm.
Um, I just side note, like I play guitar. I don't name my guitars either. Um,
I don't either.
I, a lot of people do that. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't name my bikes and I don't name my ukuleles. So what makes a
Yeah.
good trail?
Um, so what makes a good trail? I'm gonna say it's there's got to be something interesting about it.
Hmm.
Um, whether well, you said that, and I immediately thought, what's a good mountain biking trail? But the same's true like for rail trails. I I'm partial to things that go interesting places.
Yeah.
Um, that have interesting features. That's like that may be roots and rocks and logs, or like interesting trees or coves that are hidden in the woods that you can't get to any other way.
Yeah.
Like waterfalls on creeks. Have you? What There's all kinds of things that are interesting and off the wall that you will see, that are only accessed by bike. And so that's, again, like scenery, it's big on my list, whether that's on the road bike, it's on a rail trail, on a mountain bike in the woods. Yeah. The monotony of being on a rail trail as far as what you're riding on,
Yeah.
like everything is really a steady grade. There's nothing steep up or down.
No sharp turns.
That Right. Yeah, yeah. That needs to be overcome, ideally, by interesting things that you will ride past.
Right.
So that's obviously a little bit more difficult because, there's not like there isn't the level of planning behind a rail trail. It's
Right.
like, let's convert this, what used to be a railroad, into a path for bikes and for hikers and walkers and pedestrians and equestrians, like people riding horses, right? So I'm always longing for like interesting things to see, and like interesting places to explore.
Yeah.
So like there's an absolutely fascinating world around us. So I'm big on learning about the places that we go rather than just riding past them.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. Delving a little further into the mountain biking side, what makes a good trail feature?
That's different for everybody. Obviously, if you haven't picked up on this by now, I ride more on my road bike, my gravel bike,
Right.
and I'm an occasional mountain biker.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be the first guy in line for like dropping off of 6 foot rocks or anything.
Nope.
Like that's not
Nope.
that's not me. I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but I don't mountain bike enough that my skill set is developed enough to warrant that kind of behavior.
Right.
um but yeah, I'll say I want to have trail features that keep things interesting. Whether that's like log overs, um, whether that's drops that are more manageable than 6 feet off the ground. Yeah, having a line that um, that's unexpected. Um, I think is enough to add interest, whether that's you know just um, avoiding the what seems to be commonplace of like, oh well, let's just take this bench like around the edge of this hill, like like you can add some interest and take rather than like than a flat line around the side of a hill, like you know, go up the hill, go down the hill. Like there are things that can be done, um, that keep the riding interesting without it being, overly technical, or like you don't necessarily even have to add too many technical features if you're picking a line that keeps the rider kind of on their toes. Like if it's yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Um,
So you said you're more of a road guy than a gravel or mountain biking guy.
Yeah, I will say it's road first in my heart, and gravel's a pretty close second. And even to the point, if I was allowed to just have one bike, it would probably be the gravel bike.
Yeah.
But that's just because it's so versatile. Um, but yeah, yes, it'll be road number one and gravel number two, and then a step down, a distant third place would be mountain biking. But I
Okay.
still enjoy it. I just don't do it that much.
Right. All right. Friction or index shifting.
I'm an index shifting kind of guy. Um, the only bikes I've ever owned that have friction shifting have been on a time trial bike.
Right.
So yeah, I like having the controls under my fingertips, and so friction shifting like equates to bar end shifters, and I don't ride on the ends of the drops a whole lot. So um, yeah, for me, it's not the most practical choice, but I know that works for some other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
yourself included.
Myself included. Yeah. No, I put friction bar end shifters on my new Surly, and it's been
Which
working
is
great. I love it.
that is a lovely bike, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about it.
Okay.
So tell me, mechanical or electronic shifting?
Um, I for myself, I mean, I don't see any reason that the mechanical shifting doesn't, cut the mustard.
Mm.
It's absolutely fantastic. The development that they've put in the last 15 years, I think, has
Yeah.
mechanical shifting in an absolutely wonderful place, and it works so well. I don't see the need to overcomplicate and go electronic shifting. Having said that, and having had my hands on it and ridden it, it absolutely is fantastic. It works very well. Electronic shifting does. I just don't see the need for it to be on my bikes.
Right.
I'm also the kind of guy who will like forget to charge something, and so I would be the guy who gets 10 miles into a ride and then realizes that my rear derailleur's dead. So, um, yeah, that's more likely to happen than it should be. So, that I will say is kind of a self-preservation move that I don't have to charge mechanical shifting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Rim or disc brakes?
Disc brakes are so good. They're just so good. I may have been the last. There probably still are out there. I was going to say I may have been the last bike shop owner in the country to convert to disc brakes on my road bike,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, the
Night and
technology
day.
is just so good. They're so reliable.
Yeah.
It really does enhance the riding experience. Um, yes, rim brakes work, and I have ridden them for many, many years, but there's a reason that this disc brakes are the first thing that the general population has adopted and forced it upon the professional racers at the world tour level.
Hmm.
Like everything else, they've gotten the innovation first, and then it trickled down to consumers. And disc brakes, because they weren't allowed to be ridden in the pro tour,
Yeah.
um, but there was so much like grassroots demand for disc brakes on road bikes specifically, that it actually hit the everyday rider and then made its way up to the Tour de France.
Interesting.
Everything else has been exactly the opposite, but with good reason. Disc brakes were the first ones to do that.
Right.
First technology, yeah.
Hydraulic or mechanical brakes?
Uh, um, Depending on the application, I will say for most things hydraulic.
Okay.
Guys that are into bike packing and are going to be off the grid for an extended period of time, and who may not be able to get themselves to a bike shop to get something fixed if there's an issue,
Yeah.
it makes sense to go cable,
Yeah. That was,
mechanical discs.
and that's what I did with my bike. I went with the cable because I knew I could fix that in the middle of nowhere.
Right. You can absolutely carry a new cable or, a union to fix a piece of housing to put the thing back together.
Yeah.
But, fixing a hydraulic in the middle of the woods, 75 miles of riding without a brake, to get that fixed is cumbersome.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So thanks for listening to another edition of Tell Me About Your Bike. In the second part of this interview with Andrew Greene, we'll be talking about the joys of running a bike shop and Andrew's dream for bicycle infrastructure in Charleston. Please subscribe to Tell Me About Your Bike on your preferred podcasting platform and share the show with a friend. Go ahead, do it right now. Reviews of Tell Me About Your Bike help the show get out to more people. You can follow Tell Me About Your Bike on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Keep the rubber side down and keep rolling. Cheers, y'all. Copyright Rambling Ukulele Productions 2025. All rights reserved.